Welcome to 10-Minute University Noontime Chat. I'm Priscilla Robinson, and today I will be sharing some information and hopefully some inspiration to start your own vegetables from seeds. For those of you who are not familiar, with our trademark, it includes short classes, videos, and handouts on essential gardening information for you, the home gardener. Oregon State University owns the trademark. In Clackamas County, master gardeners maintain the information. Today's class is the 12th in a series of 12 webinars. With the help of these webinars, we hope to help you master your garden. For the complete lineup, please visit the Clackamas Master Gardeners website, www.cmastergardeners.org. Today, I'll focus on optimizing a variety of planting strategies for growing your own vegetables from seeds. Cool season vegetables? Why plant your own starts? Where do I begin? These are dilemmas that gardeners face every planting season. Please explore the many resources of 10-Minute University, including videos and over 50 handouts. I've listed 6 handouts from the 10-Minute University that I feel will give you excellent research-based information to help you plan and plant and grow vegetables in your garden. Today, Amelia Wilbur will co-host and facilitate the question and answer session following the presentation. Feel free to post your questions in the Q&A box throughout. We will be monitoring and posting pertinent links in the chat box. The resources at the OSU Extension Service website has a wealth of information. Here are a few of the publications you might find helpful. Growing Your Own is one of my go-to publications. I highly recommend you take a look at it. Washington State University Extension published a wonderful paper specific to propagating plants with seeds. It's super comprehensive. Have you ever tried to figure out your growing zone by looking at the back of a seed packet? I have, even with a magnifying glass. It's pretty tough. These 2 websites offer maps that can be a practical resource for planting at your location. Today, we're going to cover the following topics: gain familiarity with garden planting, understand which vegetable seeds are best for direct sowing, understand why some vegetable seeds are best started indoors, gain an understanding to best practice for starting seeds indoors and outdoors, develop strategies for handling small seeds, and develop an understanding of best practice for transplanting seedlings. Before you plant any seed, it's a good idea to make a plan. After all, you're investing time, money, and effort in this. How much time do you have for gardening? That's a big indicator in your planning process. The pandemic has really opened up the world of gardening to many individuals because they have more time at home. Is that you? Are you looking for some direction in your gardening? Garden planning involves 4 steps. Determine your garden location. Is it going to be in the ground, in containers, a raised bed? Select vegetable varieties. What do you like? What have you always wanted to try to grow? Plan a garden layout. And then acquire seeds. Your garden location and layout is key. You want a minimum of 6 to 8 hours of sunlight. You want it laid out in an east-west orientation. Think about the mature size of the plants that you are putting in your garden. Place the tallest plants along the north side and the shortest along the south side. As the sun travels through your garden, you're going to give each plant good opportunity to gain that sunshine. Design a garden layout. Measure your garden space. Draw up a garden map on graph paper or use a free app from an online source. Research the mature size of the vegetables you want to grow so you'll know how much space each plant is going to need in that garden plan. Some planting needs: pots, seedling mix, some tools, a favorable location for germination and growth, a light and heat source. Those are all things that your seeds are going to need. Buying seeds seems simple, but if you are looking to be more successful this year, you can see it takes planning. There is a lot more that goes into starting vegetables from seeds. I get the itch to start planning as soon as the Christmas decorations are all down and those seed catalogs start to arrive in the mail. Seeds are available for sale from retail stores, catalogs, online vendors. Seeds are also available at seed sharing libraries and your other gardener friends. Did you know right here in the Willamette Valley, the Sandy Library, West Lynn Library, and Milwaukee Library all have seeds to give away for free and are available to you, the home gardener. And if you don't plan to plant the back 40, chances are you may even have some seeds to share with your friends and family. Don't be overwhelmed. Sometimes I get overwhelmed, but I ask fellow gardeners what's been working for them in the garden. Browse the aisles of the garden center, but I absolutely thoroughly read the fine print on the back of seed packets. That gives me a lot of good information for vegetables that I want to grow. The information in catalogs is equally enticing and informative. Many of the online catalogs have amazing resources to help you, the home gardener. People always ask me, what shall I plant? And my advice is to choose the vegetables that you like to eat, because that's rewarding, and then branch out, try something new. After all, buying seeds and planting your own gives you the freedom from the limited varieties that are at the garden center. Here are some terms you may see on some of the packets or in the catalogs, and they can be a little confusing, so I've tried to simplify it. A cultivar means a cultivated variety, designates a vegetable variety with specific, identifiable, consistent, and reliable traits, such as hot peppers or pickling cucumbers, heat-tolerant lettuce, stringless green beans, and the list goes on. Hybrid plants are cultivars. Through breeding methods, traits from different varieties are combined, bred for specific characteristics such as size, color, and disease resistance. It's not recommended to use a hybrid if you are planning on seed saving, due to the fact the offspring may not possess the traits of the parent plant. Heirloom refers to older varieties, about 100 years old, often associated with a specific geographic region and infamous for outstanding flavor. They're often referred to as open pollinated. These plants are well suited for saving seeds because the seeds will be true to the traits of the plant parent. One drawback you might want to consider is that some of these heirloom varieties do not have good resistance to disease. Disease resistance and tolerance refers to plants that have a lower probability of contracting a disease. Gardeners are able to combat diseases without chemical inputs. Seed catalogs and websites often highlight varieties with resistance and tolerant characteristics. That might be something you want to look at. Check out the charts for each vegetable type and the relevant diseases. It's nice to pick a variety that gives you a fighting chance. If you want to know more about seeds themselves, this was a wonderful presentation given to the Master Gardeners in January. It was presented by Nicole Sanchez, OSU Assistant Professor of Horticulture. This link will take you to that recording. It's fantastic and very comprehensive and more information than I can present in this webinar. So if you want to know more about seeds, this is a really great resource. Garden planning, to me, it means planting for success. Select varieties suited to your environment. Soil preparation, plant at the right time. Check soil and air temperatures. The maturity time until harvest, and direct sowing versus starting seeds indoors. By looking at the hardiness of your area, you can make those informed decisions. Take a look at this pie chart. Healthy soil is 50% space. What's filling the space? Well, it's air and water, and those are important to have healthy soil. 45% are mineral particles. We have a lot of clay in our soil here in the Willamette Valley. It's actually a good thing, but it's important to have a balance as presented in this pie chart. If there's something troubling you about your soil, my colleague and friend Sherry Shung did an excellent webinar on soil a few weeks back, and that is available for viewing at 10-Minute University. So good garden beds need healthy soil. That means a combination of native soil, amended soil products, and compost. You also want to test your soil. Test the pH at the very least. A proper pH allows your plants to absorb nutrients and water effectively, thus enhancing their growing ability. If your pH is not quite right, you want to amend that soil. Your garden preparation also needs irrigation. You need to remove weeds and pests, loosen and rake the soil. And the last one, is your soil ready to work? This has to do with moisture content. If the soil is too wet, when you grab a handful and do the squeeze test and water drips out between your fingers and it stays in a big clump, you need to wait. I'm sorry, but you're going to be doing your soil a lot of good by waiting. Remember, we want to maintain that 50% space in there, so don't work it too soon. If you do the squeeze test and you grab that clump of soil, and when you open your hand, it breaks apart nicely, then your garden's ready to work. This is all part of the preparation process. What happens when you plant a seed? It's not magic. A seed is like a little time capsule waiting to explore a new environment. Moisture, warmth, and light are stimulus that awaken the seeds to do what it is destined to do, participate in the life cycle of the plant. Let's take a look at this bean seed as it wakes up. The seed coat or testa swells with moisture and breaks open, revealing the young root or the radicle. Soon, root hairs begin to develop and to absorb water and minerals from the soil. At this point, the energy from the original seed is At this point, the energy from the original seeds feeds from the plant. At this point, the energy for the plant comes from the seed. That seed is the cotyledon. The seed or cotyledon pushes up above the ground, and then the young shoot emerges. Beans are dicots, so they have two cotyledons. As the cotyledons shrivel and the leaves emerge, energy is then produced by the leaves through photosynthesis. Life in this plant is well underway. This is the germination process. Soaking some seeds with harder shells can help in the germination process. The photo on the left shows some dry peas. Then in the middle, some water is added. After 4 hours of soaking, can you see how the volume of the seeds has increased? Each pea is swelling up. The photo on the very top shows the swollen radicle ready to emerge from the seed. One strategy to ensure germination of your seeds with harder shells, such as peas, beans, corn, are to soak the seeds before planting them to awaken the seed. By hydrating the seed, the radicle or young root is ready to start the life cycle of the plant. You can take this process a step further with a controlled initial emergence of the young root. The first photo on the left shows the soaked seeds placed on a double layer of damp paper towels. The middle photo depicts the peas being covered by another layer of damp paper towel. Then roll the entire paper towel carefully. I like to try my best to keep the seeds separated in this rolling process. The rolled paper towels with peas in them are then placed in a heavy-duty zip bag. But I don't zip the bag. I want to allow for air circulation. If I notice some water pooling in the bag, I pour off that extra water. Remember, the seeds want a damp environment, not a soggy one. The actual emergence time may vary based on the seeds and the room temperature in your home. So after about 36 hours, take a peek. If the young root is emerging, you are ready to plant. If not, give it a bit more time. The photo on the far right shows what the seed looks like when it's ready to plant. Look at that young root poking out. These are babies. Be careful how you handle them. I actually carry my jelly rolls of paper towels on a tray so that I don't jostle them too much. The benefit of the controlled initial emergence of the young root is you know for sure which seeds are viable and which are not. Another benefit is the seed has a head start in the growing process. It is not an advantage to let these seeds to continue to grow a longer young root. Get them in the ground. Plant the seeds very gently. No need to plant them in any particular direction. Roots know their way around soil. If you knock off one of the young roots, replace that seed. Without the young root, the plant has no hope for growth. The best spring vegetables are cool season crops, those in the broccoli family, the leafy greens, and root vegetables. This cool season is determined by the soil temperature. I actually use a soil thermometer to monitor the temperature. Soil temperature is critical for germination. You need at least 35 to 50 degrees for early season vegetables. If you start too soon, there's not enough warmth and that seed can't wake up and it just rots. So do your work beforehand. On the bottom right is a photo of my little container garden where I have peas growing up, lettuce, spinach, and radishes. These are all cool season crops. If you're looking for some of the best performing vegetables, OSU does field trials. Here is the link to that field trial. Actually, all the field trials, even the past ones, are great to look at if you are looking for a variety of vegetable that will do well in our climate. Take a look at that. Season extenders let you plant earlier. The photo on the bottom is a raised bed. I can start growing things in this garden in February, as soon as the soil reaches about 35 degrees. You can also grow in containers like big pots. You can put row covers on. The white tubes in this photo on the right are row covers supported with a metal rod underneath. You can also build cold frames, apply cloches, mulch, or even plastic mulch. The photo on the right shows at the bottom the young squash plants being encouraged to warm the soil with the plastic mulch. The young tomato plants that were planted after Mother's Day have jugs of water placed near them. Those jugs will warm up during the day with the help of the sun, and the water retains that heat. So as evening draws and the air temperature cools down, there's a little buffer of warmth coming to your tomato plants. This will help them grow and thrive. I have found it to be really helpful. Best summer vegetables. Corn and beans like to be planted directly into the soil. Both of them thrive in soils of 65 to 75 degrees. So you're going to want to look for varieties that have the fewest days to maturity. Really embrace a shorter growing season by using season extenders for spring and fall. So these are also warm season crops. However, with our shorter growing season, it's questionable if you will be able to really get a substantial harvest before the weather cools off. Therefore, you can get a jump start with these plants by sowing and caring for the plants indoors. You can germinate seeds in a wide variety of containers. They are available at retail markets or repurpose a household item. Materials could include cardboard egg cartons, peat pots, plug trays, cell packs, even styrofoam cups. The list goes on and on. What's really important is that the containers should always be clean. If they have held soil, please sterilize them with a mild bleach solution and rinse well. The containers need good drainage, so punch holes on the bottom or the sides to allow for free drainage. Organize your pots on plastic flats or trays so you can move them around easily. The seeds need a germination media. Commercial seedling mix is a good option. I've actually never done this, but you can make your own, and OSU recommends this recipe: 2 parts garden soil, 1 part peat or core, and 1 part coarse sand. It should be combined and sifted to make a fine, consistent planting medium. Where are you going to grow your seeds? In a perfect world with best practices in play, you control the amount of moisture, your soil temperature, and the light for your developing plants. That might include having a greenhouse, large or small. It admits natural light and helps with a stable environment. Soil temperature. Heating mats provide warmth for uniform germination and development. Many come with thermostats, so you can set your soil temperature at a perfect amount. Always monitor the temperature of your soil while growing your plants. You don't want to cook them. Artificial light sources provide light for extending your daylight hours. You want it suspended about 4 to 8 inches above the developing plants. Sowing seeds indoors. You always want to moisten that germination media thoroughly before planting your seed. I actually put the hose right in the bag and mix it all up. Then I place the media in the containers, press it down firmly to flatten it. It's important that you're going to label these plants. All the pots are going to look the same after a while. Write the plant name and the date of sowing on the tag, and add those labels to your pots or your trays right away before you forget. For larger seeds, make holes with a pencil the desired depth. Plant 1 seed in each hole and cover with the soil and water it in well. Apply a propagation dome or some plastic wrap or even a sheet of glass over these pots. That will help to retain moisture. It'll help to stabilize the temperature and promote germination. That's what a propagation dome looks like. Sowing small seeds has started to become troublesome for me as I've gotten older. My eyesight's not as good. The dexterity of my fingers isn't as great. But I've come up with some strategies. If you're going to sow them inside, you can just sort of sprinkle a few seeds on top of that wet medium and then sprinkle a little bit more of the soil, the growing medium, and then mist the soil. Don't use a watering can, use a spray bottle to apply just another light layer of water. Apply the propagation dome and then keep that media moist and warm to prevent damping off. That's when that that little germinating plant starts to emerge and all of a sudden it just kind of falls over. That's called damping off, and it's often caused by overwatering or not enough warmth in the soil. If handling small seeds is a problem for you, you might try pelleted seeds. Pelleted seeds are another option. Pelleted seeds are the tiny seeds that have then been coated with a covering to enlarge the size of the seed so that you can handle it more easily. I also find when I'm working with a group of young children, they do well with pelleted seeds. Sometimes they're even brightly colored, which really helps when I'm trying to say, okay, plant the radish seed, that's the red one. Plant the lettuce seed, that's the purple seed. It just makes planting a lot easier. So once your plant emerges, you're not out of the dark yet. You still have to care for that seedling. Make sure that the soil is still maintaining a nice warm. Monitor the soil moisture. In the diagram on the right, this photo is an excellent demonstration to the different stages of development for the emerging seedling. This shows the first leaves or first true leaves emerging right there in the middle. The roots and the root hairs really spread out in the growing media as they develop. The needs of the plant changes as it develops. It's important to recognize the growth stages if you want to provide care for them. Windowsills are not the best place for these pots. It's often too hot during the day and too cool at night. These temperature swings are not healthy. If that's your only option, that's okay. Keep growing, but monitor the soil temperature to minimize the temperature swings. Supplementing with artificial light, a fluorescent fixture with a 40-watt cool, warm white, or grow type tube provided 3 to 6 inches above for about 14 to 16 hours is perfect for seedlings. Something to aim for. Once the true leaves appear, the plant uses nitrogen for plant growth. Apply a half-strength water-soluble fertilizer once a week to this developing seedling. The developing seedling needs an initial transplant. The seedling develop and they kind of outgrow that little container. And it's best to transplant seedlings into a bigger container, but not too big. After the first true leaves have developed, transplant your seedling. Failure to transplant into a bigger container in a timely manner may result in undesirable plant characteristics. When moving the delicate plant, do not grab the stem. If you must steady the plant, grab a leaf. A leaf will grow back, but disturbing or bending the stem can be fatal to the seedling plant. Transplants need good lighting, proper temperature, water, and mineral nutrients to grow well. Remember, nitrogen is the building block for plant growth. It's the first number on the fertilizer package. When I move one of these seedlings, I use a little plastic spoon to scoop out the seedling and lift the plant with as much of the growing media as possible. Remember, don't grab the stem. It's a tough world out there. When the vegetable starts to become well developed, for best results, do not abruptly transfer the seedling from indoors to the uncertain outdoor climate. Gradually acclimatize or toughen the plant for about 2 weeks before planting them in your garden. This process actually slows down the rate of growth of the plant. So don't be alarmed if your plant starts to slow down a little. And it will prepare them to withstand conditions such as cold, drying wind, water shortage, or high temperatures. Hardening off is a very important process. If you happen to buy starts from a garden center, don't assume they've been hardened off. They're often sitting in a big greenhouse. So even if you buy starts from a garden center, go through the same process for at least a week or two. Harden them off. So when are you going to want to do this? As the air temperatures warm consistently to about 60 to 80 degrees in the day, and the nights are no cooler than about 60 degrees. Place the seedlings outside in a partial shade for 1 to 2 hours at the beginning. Gradually increase the amount of time spent outside in that partial shade until you eventually are able to place them in direct sunlight. Remember, this is going to take about 2 weeks. Don't forget to bring your plants in at night. You might have some sad plants in the morning. The big move into the garden. When you're going to transplant your seeds into the garden, choose a cloudy day or wait until early evening. You don't want to place these precious seedlings out on a hot day. Determine the best garden location. Remember, we talked about taller plants on the north side, shorter plants on the south side, and plant them at the recommended spacing. You want to, before you put the plants into the ground, you want to fully hydrate them. I actually make a bucket of that half-strength water-soluble fertilizer. I make it deep enough so that I can submerge the pot into the bucket. It's amazing. You see these bubbles coming up. The airspace is now being replaced with water space. This really gives your plants a fighting chance. Dig the holes slightly bigger than the size of the pot. Fill one hole at a time with that half-strength water-soluble fertilizer. Place your plant in the hole and then gently cover it up. To get your plants out of the pots can be a bit like a juggling act, but this is my trick. I hold the pot in one hand, loosen the plant gently by knocking the side of the pot with the other hand. I place my fingers on the soil and straddle the plant using my index and middle finger. Gently turn the pot over and then grab that root ball. Place the plant in the hole, fill it up. I like to create a slight saucer shape around the stem of the plant. And then I boost the plant with more liquid fertilizer. That little saucer helps the water to really go down onto the root sections. The last step is I apply row covers. They help to protect the new seedlings from cool evenings and the pests. Proper timing of planting seeds is important for good crop production. Consult seed packets or planting charts, and always monitor your soil temperatures for at least 7 days. Do not rush the season by planting seeds sensitive to cool soil too early. Chances are the seeds will either rot in the ground or your plant will not be hardy. Similarly, do not attempt to plant heat-sensitive seeds in the midsummer. Those plants will wilt or bolt in the heat of the summer, and you won't have the crop that you're expecting. Proper timing of planting seeds is important for good crop production. Use a tool to dig a shallow furrow along the line to make a row. Solid fertilizer can be applied to the furrow and worked into the soil. Check the seed packet for details on seed and row spacing. Cover the seed with soil, water in, and keep the soil evenly moist during germination. Consistent cultural conditions will reap rewards. On the right, you can see I've applied row cover to my newly planted seeds. Wonder what I'll be looking at in a little while. It's always exciting to plant those seeds. If you don't have a large garden and you can't plant a long row, another option to maximize a small garden bed is called square foot gardening. This intensive form of gardening strays from rows, and you just plant your seeds into quadrants instead of rows. Like I said, starting to handle small seeds became a problem for me. How do you deal with those tiny seeds that are smaller than a poppy seed? And have you ever tried to sow carrot, radish, or lettuce seeds on a windy day? Those seeds go everywhere. So I started using seed tape with a group of master gardener friends. It was totally new to me. Sowing 4 rows of lettuce was a piece of cake. A week later, the results had sold me on the method. Lots of seedlings popping up, perfectly spaced. Seed tape can save you money because you're not overusing your seeds. It can save you lots of time, effort, and it might get you growing some of those varieties that you've strayed away from because you didn't want to deal with them. So let's learn out how to make seed tape. Homemade seed tape allows you to master those pesky little seeds, saving you time and money. I like it because I choose unusual or favorite vegetable varieties. Seed tape is available commercially, but it's about 4 times the cost, and they have very limited varieties. Chances are you have these ingredients or supplies necessary to make seed tape. I often prepare seed tape on rainy days or in the late afternoon to escape the heat. So this is how I make seed tape. I find that 4 sheets of toilet paper is just about the perfect amount of paper I can deal with. I fold it in half lengthwise and then cut on that fold, as in photo number 2. Then I carefully separate the 2 plies into a single ply. You should have 4 strips of single ply toilet paper at this point, as seen in number 3. Then each one of those strips, I fold in half just to create a crease. Open it up. I carefully read the directions on the seed packets for spacing. Place the ruler along the edge of the toilet paper. Then I place dots of glue down on one side of the toilet paper. You must use a water-soluble glue, or you can make a glue out of equal parts flour and water. After you place the dots of glue on your toilet paper, place a seed on each drop of glue, as you can see in picture number 6 and 7. Number 8 shows that I've now folded that other side of the toilet paper over, and I gently press on each dab of glue to seal that area. Remember to label the seed tape. I write right on it. After I finish a strip, then I actually hang it to dry. The oven is not on. I'm not baking it, but I usually make my seed tape in the kitchen, so that's a handy drying rack. I just use the rack on my dishwasher and my oven. At the same time, just to save time and energy, I label a tag for each vegetable. I label an envelope. On that envelope, I put the plant name, the plant depth, the planting information, anything I'm going to need when I get out to the garden. Then I store those envelopes in a cool, dry place. And this is how I use the seed tape in my garden. I use a tool to dig a shallow furrow. Solid fertilizer can be applied to the soil and worked in a bit. Check the envelope for the depth and planting details. And then I saturate the soil. This can be done with a watering can or a hose with a shower attachment. See my little shower attachment up there in the first photo, the blue? That's what I like to use. Then I gently lay the seed tape in the furrow, the desired length, and saturate the seed tape with a light shower of water. Saturate that seed tape until you start to see the glue start to rehydrate. The photo on the far right is my attempt to show you how the glue, the white glue, is actually starting to spread out. You can kind of see it right here and right here. I use the surrounding soil to cover the seed tape completely. Apply another light shower of water. If any of the white seed tape shows through, then I lightly cover those gaps with soil. On the desired garden rows, and then I label each of the rows. If you're using a drip system, you'll want to then place those hoses near the rows of the newly planted seeds. If hand watering, remember to keep those areas moist until the seedlings are established. A row cover will help germinate and protect the developing plants by warming the soil and keeping the pests out. So the next photo I'm going to show you is what this row looked like after I took the row cover off. On the left-hand side, you can see my turnips coming up, growing really nicely. And next to it are beets. So what was really cool is the turnips were going to be planted or picked first. So as large ones grew, I would pull those out, let the other ones develop. But by the time all my turnips were harvested, I provided lots of new light for the developing beets that are right next to it. So I really feel like when I plant my seeds in the ground, I get good results. I get vegetables that I can share with others. As a science educator, I find growing plants from seeds fascinating. It's great sharing it with my learners, my family members, my neighbors. I hope that the information presented today will inspire you to take a chance on a new vegetable variety, improve your cultural practices, and ultimately harvest and enjoy fresh vegetables that you, your family, and community can enjoy. If you have little ones at home doing distance learning, this is an opportunity. If you find yourself working from home and having spare time, this is an opportunity. Don't forget to check out the resources we've included in this video in many of our 10-Minute University website handouts. The presentation is being recorded and will be available at 10-Minute University at www.cmastergardeners.org. Let's welcome Amelia Wilbur. She has been answering and monitoring the Q&A box. Hi there, Amelia.
Hi, Priscilla. Nice to see you on the screen.
Yeah, today
Excellent
I'm,
presentation. Thank you.
oh, thanks. Yeah,
We have quite a few questions and a limited amount of time, so I'll try to group them. If the questions that have come in, we don't get to them, we're going to give you a couple of sources that you can access to put your question out and get answered.
okay.
One of the first ones that came in had to do with getting the transfer from the greenhouse out into the garden and the problems that can sometimes occur. There were actually two questions. I'm going to list them both here. Maybe we can kind of group them as we answer. One person said that they had started their plants in the greenhouse, but they were getting quite tall and lanky. They've repotted them, but they're still very lanky and want to know what to do. And along with that then is another question about how long from the indoor germination till ready to put in the garden. And of course, that's always the issue is if they get tall and lanky, can I put them out? Is the soil ready? Is the weather ready? What would you say to try to address that, Priscilla?
Okay, well, a tall, lanky plant is usually an indicator that it wants more light. So is there any way that you could possibly provide some artificial light for that? And as far as when to put it out into the garden, you really do not want to rush things. But one possibility would be a cold frame. A cold frame provides a nice growing environment, and maybe they'll get more sunlight in that cold frame. And there are some websites at OSU on how to build a cold frame.
Right. And sometimes not only not enough light, but maybe too much if she's got them on a heat mat, too much heat can force them to grow tall and lanky. So the other question though from the other listener was, and this I think is specific to each particular variety cultivar, and that is how long from the indoor germination till I can put them out. And that is dependent on the soil, temperature, and what that particular plant needs.
Correct.
Some need 60 degrees, some you can put out at 50, and that would be something for the gardener to learn about the soil temperature.
Yes, and I often have gardeners get impatient with seeds, and please be sure to check the germination rate on those because sometimes it can be 3 days, 4 days, like a radish, but it can be up to 10 days for other varieties. So don't get impatient. And I always find the biggest indicator that a plant is ready to be planted outside is that you really have a good amount of root material growing, in your pot, not root bound, not the roots coming out the holes, but kind of just tip out a pot and see if the roots are well developed. If they're well developed, they've got more of a chance to get out into the garden than if they don't have good roots.
Yes, good. And as I look back to this question, she mentions the plant is actually a bush bean, which she has started indoors. And that's a plant that really does better going directly into the garden. Some plants, corn and beans, are better off just planted right into the garden rather than as a start in a germ house, especially this early in the year for a bush bean. Would I imagine she's
Yeah.
going to have some challenges there.
Yeah, I've done it both ways. I do find that the direct sow is always gives me a really vibrant plant that is vigorous in its growing and in its production of beans. So
Good, good.
good
Interesting
luck.
question. Interesting question was, how long does seeds stay viable? And I referenced during your presentation when some from our Master Gardener publications. The viability of vegetable seeds varies from 1 year to up to 5 years. Many of them are 3, 4, and 5 years. You can keep them and use them the next year. The most fragile, it seemed to be onion for a year, corn for a year, and leek for a year. Other than that, all the rest of them were good for 3, 4, and 5 years. Most vegetable seeds. So that's encouraging if you don't get to use them all this year.
And in my presentation when I did the emergence for the root the young root, you can actually do a germination test on some seeds. I like to put 10 seeds down. I soak them a little bit, put them on a paper towel, and then put them in a bag and give them some time. And And if they're supposed to germinate in 5 to 7 days, I open that paper towel up. If I've only got one germinating, that's only 10% that are viable in that package. Not worth your time. But if all of them germinate, hey, give it a go.
Hey, that's very good. So you don't waste the whole season waiting for them to come up and wondering if they were viable. So
Right.
a pre-test, excellent suggestion.
Pre-test like
Yeah.
that.
Question was, Lindsay wanted to know how does she know what seeds should be soaked? You mentioned soaking seeds. Are there some that you should or shouldn't?
Seeds that have a harder outside shell are the ones that you want to soak. And it's usually listed in the catalog or on the back of the seed packet. Rule of thumb, I always soak corn seeds, bean seeds, can even soak squash seeds for a little while before you put those in to grow. How about you? What do you feel is good to soak? Any varieties?
Well, if they're too tiny, they're not going to be fun to soak because then you're
No.
trying to pick them out with a sieve. But yes, no, I agree. The hard shell ones, usually the ones that I'm planting directly into the garden, which would be the ones you've mentioned, beans, peas, and corn. So,
Agreed.
good question Kendra has. I'm not sure where she lives, but she says, is it too late to plant cold season crops?
No, it's not too late. It's still perfect. But you know what, Kendra, you can be a scientist and go out there with a thermometer and check the temperature. So I did mention in my talk that you don't want to be planting cool crops if you're getting into midsummer. That's what, you know, I don't do it here in the Pacific Northwest. So monitor your soil and your daily temperatures, and that'll be your indicator.
You know, it's interesting. We think of the cold season crops, lettuce and spinach. I grow them actually almost the whole summer as long as I can put them where they're getting some shade, so that they're still good. Sometimes they'll bolt a little early, but then you can start them again in the late summer in August, early September, and then you've got them growing nicely. But it's not too late to plant them. So
Yeah, and that's a really good point because sometimes when I pulled my peas out, say by, you know, July, then I'll sometimes plant my lettuce behind on that north side of the garden bed, and it does get enough protection from the heat that they're successful. Good point, Amelia.
well, you make gardening sound fun, Priscilla, and very doable. And that's good. We need that for encouragement. And we're going to kind of roll up here with the last questions. I had to do a couple of them had to do, I think, but I got them up here on my question. It has to do with you were talking about. Let me see where it is about the fertilization and somehow it's the question has disappeared, but I know it had to do with if they've already fertilized quite recently, do they add more? And what is a good fertilizer for direct fertilizing into the soil where you're planting around the seeds? So I think there's some caution there about the amount of fertilization needed.
Yeah. First of all, you can always test your soil to see what types of fertilizers need to be added. But one of the things that I always add to my rows is a high nitrogen, perhaps a bone meal or a feather meal, and I follow the instructions on the fertilizer and I work that into the soil. And as far as liquid fertilizers, I don't know if they were talking about that. I just like to rehydrate those little transplants in that, and it just gives them a nice burst of material that they can immediately use. Solid fertilizers take longer for the soil and those microbes to process so that the plant can use it, whereas the liquid fertilizer is going to be immediate and give those plants a boost and get them growing.
When I do watering of my transplants, or the ones that are just potted still, not ready to go in the garden yet, but I want to water them, I put them in a barrel or a box with so that I can have the fertilizer diluted in, so they're bottom watering. So the water is taken up through the bottom of the potting plant, and it's really absorbs it nicely and gets a nice safe amount of fertilizer. So that's
Nice. So you put the fertilizer, say, on the tray that's holding all your
mix it into the
starts?
water. I mix it into the water that I'm going to soak the pots in. So I take them out and put them in. They need some water. Instead of spraying it, I'm going to soak them from the bottom up, which is a nice, safe way.
Okay.
Well, I think we're about out of time. There's still more questions, and I want to let you know if you do have questions that we didn't get to, there are some sources you can go to. I'm going to give you this, and maybe you have access to typing that in right now? No, probably not, where they can see it on the screen. Here it is. 10-minute U 2017@gmail.com. I'm going to give that to you again. If we didn't get your questions answered, or you still have some more, send them to 10-minute, that's 10 to digit, 10-minute U 2017@gmail.com. Or you can always just call the Metro Master Gardener line or .org. I think we've probably run out of time. Closing remarks to just encourage us all to be as successful as we can be, Priscilla?
You know, as I said, you just need to get growing. Start a little bit at a time. If you have nothing going, try a container. Maybe you have access to a community raised bed, but use your resources and we're here for you.
Thanks to everyone for joining us. And gardening can be fun. And even master gardeners find themselves saying, oops, what did I do wrong? And learning better from each process. So we learn as we grow. Thank you for attending. Thanks, Priscilla, for all your work.
Thank you, Amelia. And thank you everyone for attending. And we have another wonderful program tomorrow on transplanting tomatoes. And Amelia will be hosting that. If you're thinking about getting ready to get your tomatoes in the ground, it's a program you'll want to watch tomorrow, same time.
Same time. We'll see you then if you're interested in tomatoes.
All right. See you then.
Bye.